If you're struggling with your work life balance and just can't seem to manage your many responsibilities well without sacrificing self care, you're not alone. May I suggest our Life Balance Planner, which Book Authority listed as one of the top work life balance resources to be released in 2021. It's a 3-month, undated planner with a uniquely integrated life balance tracking system, as well as self care planning for your daily, weekly, and monthly routine. For a limited time, you can purchase your first planner for 30% off at paulwcroswell.com using promo code PODPLANNER. That's Pod Planner, no spaces. We're also rolling out a new feature where for just $1.90 a week, you never have to worry about buying a new planner again. How amazing is that? With this subscription, we'll send you a new planner every 3 months before your current planner fills up. To get your planner today, visit paulwcroswell.com/planner. Act now, okay? Let's dive in.
I think we take that for granted. I really do. We forget to pay attention to how we're breathing and just taking a minute or two to take a deep breath in and let it out. You will be surprised at how much better you feel. I have it programmed on my watch. I have a smartwatch. It's programmed so I can just hit the button and I can do a breathing exercise for a minute. Sometimes I need that between clients because I've had a very challenging session. I'm going to need that time to recalibrate, right? And so I would say first, practice that art of breathing because it keeps you in the moment. It helps to center yourself, and then you're ready to tackle the stressful thing that's in front of you. Second thing is get plenty of sleep. We don't get enough sleep. We need to get some sleep. And so that's one of the biggest things, biggest changes I made in my life. And people always ask me, "Do you ever sleep? I see what all you do. Do you ever sleep?" Yes. I'm like the 8 or 9, 10 if I could have it, girl, sleep. I love my sleep.
Welcome to the Paul Croswell audio experience.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is Paul, your host, and I hope you've been having a good day. I do appreciate that I get to be a part of your day with yet another great conversation. My guest today is Tina Baxter, the founder and owner of Baxter Professional Services, a consulting firm which provides legal nurse consulting services for attorneys and insurance professionals. She's also the founder of the Nurse Shark Academy, where she coaches nurses into launching and scaling their businesses. In this conversation, we talk about Tina's work as a nurse, as a business owner, and of course, as a coach. We also discuss what it means to be a commissioned church nurse and her goal to write a book in 30 days. Strap in for a great conversation. Tina, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I like to start off each of these conversations simply by asking, "How's your day going? Like, how are you today specifically?"
Well, it's been a little bit of an adventure simply because I was scheduled for a colonoscopy this morning. So I've had a colonoscopy this morning and fresh out of the anesthesia a few hours ago. Um, and I thought, you know what? If you asked, I was going to share that because I want more people to get tested and take care of themselves. So
Yeah.
I don't mind sharing that kind of stuff.
No, I appreciate your transparency and vulnerability. I agree with that. It's absolutely necessary. There are a lot of things that I'm surprised we don't talk more about, like just in society. And they're simple things. It's just simple self-care things. So I'm glad that you were open enough to share that.
Everything went well, clean bill of health.
That's
So I'm
awesome.
glad.
I'm happy to hear it.
Yep.
All right. Well, um You do a lot of different things. And as I was reading through your biography, like we were talking about earlier, there was so much. I was trying to figure out, what direction do I want to go in, because we can dive deep into so many different things here. Um, and I figured a good place to start would be with the Baxter Professional Services. You're the owner
Mhm.
of
Yes.
Baxter Professional Services LLC. Why don't you walk us through what led you to starting that business?
Accidentally. Accidentally on purpose is what I need to say. So, I started a business, His Solutions Healthcare, with two other business partners, and we had been in business for about, I'm going to say, what was it? Gosh, like 6 years at that point. And that business was at that point was growing, and so I was asked by an attorney to sit on a medical review panel. Now, in Indiana, if there's a lawsuit, a medical lawsuit, oftentimes it has to go before the medical review panel process before the Board of Insurance.
Okay.
And so they asked me to come on board as an expert for this particular case, which, by the way, was a very difficult case. So I got boxes of records on this case.
Wow.
And in the course of this, he says, "Well, we're going to have to take your deposition later, and what's your fee schedule?" And I said, "Let me get back to you." Because I'd never done this before. I never had a fee schedule and never thought about it. And so that's kind of how we got started. In the middle of doing that case, another attorney said, "Hey, I've got to get your deposition. I need your fee schedule." And I'm like, I better come up with something quickly and figure out what I'm supposed to do. And that's how
Yeah.
we got started. So my husband and I talked it over and I launched my second business. And I found that I just really love helping the attorneys figure out what happened in the medical case. So I feel like I do a service and I'm almost a voice for the patient that's in that case. And I explain what happened to them.
Yeah. And that's so important. Well, two thoughts on that. The first is, so many great things in life happen accidentally on purpose.
Yes.
We could probably agree on that, right?
Hmm.
I mean, there's so many, I think we could probably share a bunch of stories of different things that's happened in our lives where accidentally on purpose is basically what would explain it. And they're all beautiful. Most of them are all beautiful things. So I love that that's the origin story, so to speak, for the business. And then the other piece of it, I think it's so important that the patient has someone to advocate, to be a voice for them. So I have sickle cell anemia, and that's something I've navigated my entire life.
Hmm.
And I'm sure know all about that. But having dealing with chronic pain, and this isn't so much in the court side of things or legal
Right.
side. It's more so directly in the nurse patient, doctor patient relationship. When you're in the midst of severe chronic pain, you don't function well enough to think clearly and answer all the questions well. And it's always helpful when there's someone there to be an advocate, to speak on your behalf, who can care. You know what I mean?
Definitely. I always encourage people, take someone with you if you're going to go for a surgery or you have a complex medical condition. Take someone that can help you take notes. Ask questions that you may forget to ask. And I know several of my nurse colleagues who have a business doing just that. They come in as a patient advocate and they help you in your appointment to ask the questions you may not know to ask.
Yeah.
The great thing about me is that, like, I have the background, the medical background, so I can advocate for myself in most cases. But I can't imagine someone who didn't have a healthcare background trying to navigate our complex medical system.
Yeah.
When my dad went in to the nursing home for rehab, he had had a minor stroke, and so he had to go to the nursing home. My mom didn't know what to ask for. I'm like, well, Where's his walker? Where's his wheelchair? Where's all these things that he's going to need before he goes home? And they should have provided all of those things for him, but the social worker kind of dropped the ball. So, it's those types of things. It's having someone there that understands the questions that you need to ask and advocate for you. It's very important.
Yeah. And just a side question on that, I guess. Um, as someone who is in that world and in the medical field, do you see or are there currently programs in place where, there if a patient comes in that doesn't have someone who can advocate, where, they can ask for someone who would, be able to do that for them or anything like that? Is there anything like that in existence currently?
Yes, there are some patient advocate programs, and there are some wonderful nurses that have started their own business, and they do just that. I've got a very good friend out of Ohio, and she started her business. She's also a legal nurse consultant, but she's also a patient advocate. And she worked in case management. So she really knows how to get you the resources that you would need. So I think that's wonderful. So if you have a chance to ask for one in the healthcare field, or if you're going to have something happen, ask for one, and ask if there's any resources in your local area.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important for people to know that those services exist,
Mhm.
right? Because it's like you said, it's very easy to get lost in the complicatedness of the medical system, right? Because I mean, it's kind of a behemoth, the system, and in a way, it has to be, right? Because there's so much happening in terms of caring for people and diagnoses and the processes that nurses and doctors have to go through to make sure things are vetted correctly and going through the right channels. It has to be a really kind of robust system. I don't know if it necessarily has to be as complicated as it is, but I think its complication is somewhat justified.
Well, when you think about this, every practice, hospital system has their own medical record system. So even though we're most of it is like electronic, one system may not speak to another. You have practices that, because of HIPAA laws, they're only allowed to see certain things. And so you really need someone to be that central person
Yeah.
to kind of be the hub of everything. And typically that would be your family practice provider, will kind of be the person to kind of steer the ship with all the different specialists. But a lot of times, if you don't know to carry your information from this provider to that provider, things get missed. I worked in long term care, and a lot of my patients would come in with pages and pages of medications. And it's because they had a heart doctor, and then they had a renal doctor, and then they had a dermatologist, and then they had
Yeah.
their family practice doctor, and then a psychiatrist. I mean, it runs the gamut. And you have all these specialists, and sometimes they don't talk to each other, and so there's a lot of duplication of medication. So part of my role in that was to help them narrow down some of that information and see if
Yeah.
we can reduce their medication load.
Yeah, and man, I appreciate you doing that. As someone who has to interact with the medical system frequently, I appreciate when I see things like that happen because I've gotten to the point now where I'm fairly comfortable with my interactions and how I'm navigating it and making sure the right information is getting to the right people. But I definitely know that there are people who have a hard time with it, and so it's really, really important that people know that that's an option and that they can get help for that. Um, and one of the other services that you offered was or offer currently, I believe, is wellness and chronic disease management coaching.
Yes.
Talk to me about that. How does that work? I've never heard of this kind of coaching before.
Well, a lot of the wellness coaches that I see out there, and they do excellent work, are focused around things like losing weight or preventing illness. And I'm like, well, what about the rest of us, right? What about the people that have already have the illness, the the horses out of the barn? You're not going to really fix the situation to where you can prevent it because it's already happened. How do you manage your day to day, everyday life?
Yeah.
And that's where I come in. I taught a chronic disease management course through the um, Anderson, Indiana Minority Health Coalition. And I would teach this course about how to break up your everyday activities so that it makes sense for you. So I had a client with arthritis. And she was complaining about, how long it takes her to do her laundry and getting her laundry done and how exhausting it was. And I said, so why don't we break it up into little blocks?
Yeah.
So go gather your laundry and put it in the washer and then take a break and do something else, do something sitting down. Then get the laundry out and put it into the dryer and then sit down and rest or do something else. And then bring it to the table and sit down and fold it. Just breaking those steps up made her day a lot easier than trying to do it all at once. And it was like, I never thought of that. That's what she said. I never thought of doing it that way. I said, but it's a great way of blocking your time. So you still get your things done, but you focus on the most important things and you want to take care of your health in between. And maybe doing it all at once, when you were younger, you were able to, but now you've got rheumatoid arthritis and you're not able to do that delicate work that you needed. So how can we make it easier for you to live your life and still be as independent as possible? So that's one component of what I teach. And
Yeah.
then my second component is the wellness piece. And what I found is that most people are stressed out and they don't know how to regulate their own emotions. And
Yeah.
so what I teach is how to understand what's happening within your own body and how to help manage those emotions without using pharmaceutical methods.
I like that. I like that a lot. And so this is it's interesting because as someone who is in the medical world, I think it's curious that, you're in a position where you're helping someone to navigate stress management or wellness overall without necessarily having to engage the medical world. What inspired you to go that route to do that?
Well, I still treat people clinically. I still work and I'm active and keep my license active. And I still work for full time as a nurse practitioner.
Yeah,
So I believe medicines have their role. But
absolutely.
there are other things that we can do on our own to help better our health. And one of the things that we can do is manage our stress. Our stress causes a lot of other issues in our body with the increase in the cortisol and all of these other things that we have, disruption of our neurotransmitters. People are more anxious and depressed when they're under a lot of stress. And how do you manage that? And it may come out in a physical ailment. So you get more stomach aches and headaches and things like that. But if you were to take a time to learn how to stay in the moment, to realign yourself with what's happening, you can mitigate a lot of those stress responses. And when something stressful happens, you can react in a much more positive way than not a negative way. And so for instance, I had a young man who was in school. He was 10 years old and he had a lot of anxiety around school and testing and things like that. And so we were able to get him to pinpoint when he was feeling that tension in his body and to find a way to go and use his relaxation techniques to help him get through that. And he was doing so well with that. I may introduce essential oils and other modalities in there to help you. But ultimately, my goal is to work with your medical team, not against your medical team. And
Yeah.
I don't replace your therapist. If you need a therapist, then continue to see your therapist. What I do is I help you to understand what's happening with you so that maybe your therapy session will go a lot better.
Yeah. And I think that's really cool because I think a lot of folks don't know that sometimes what they're feeling in their body is it's not because of something they ate or that they stretched wrong or they bent over wrong or something. It could be directly a result of stress and not managing your stress well. And like you're saying, you may not need to go and go to the pharmacy to grab something. There may be things that you can do in just your regular daily activity, mindfulness and so on, that can help to actually relieve physical ailments, right? And a lot of people don't know that. I think we've come to the place as a society where we've popularized the idea that a pill or some kind of medicine is the cure or the fix it for every ailment possible that surfaces, and we overlook the fact that no, it might be emotional.
It
It
could be emotional.
Yeah,
It could be what you're eating.
yeah,
It could be a lot of different factors, and so that's why I think people need to own their own health. A lot of people have turned their healthcare over to the medical provider and say, "You fix it." And I get the people that come in my office, they're like, "Give me something that's gonna fix this right away." And because of what I do, I work in psychiatry, and like, it's not gonna happen overnight. You didn't get here overnight. You're not gonna get out of this overnight, right? So it's a process. And I try to explain that to people. You need to take care of yourself. What are you doing in your day-to-day life? It really impacts how you feel emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. I mean, if you're going to be a couch potato and sit there all day and stare at a screen and not do anything, you're not going to feel good. Why? Because our bodies are designed to move.
yeah,
And if you're not, trying to keep your mind engaged in something, the people that I find that typically are the most depressed are the ones that don't have some sort of outlet. I don't care if it's art, music, whatever, you have to have something that makes your heart sing. And if you haven't found that, that's going to be difficult for you.
I like that. Something that makes your heart sing. And I think that that could be a very interesting exercise for anyone listening right now. Uh, if you would consider pausing and maybe grabbing a notebook or something and making a list of 3 to 5 things of something that what are the things that make your heart sing, that bring you joy, that make you happy, that can be a sort of outlet, especially if you're dealing with stress right now. um so thank you for that. I think that that's a gem
Can I
there. And go ahead.
give a few examples? Because I think people will sit there and go, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Because I hear this all the time. So for me, I'm going to tell you what works for me. I love music.
Yeah,
And so I have a very eclectic music collection. So you never know what mood I'm going to be in. So I may be in a more of a chill, melancholy mood that I'm going to listen to Adele. Okay. That's what I
yeah,
listen to Adele. But if I'm in a real, like, it's Friday groove, I might end up listening to the Black Eyed Peas, or maybe I'm going to be listening to ABBA. You never know. But if
yeah,
I'm in a place where I feel really spiritual, and I may listen to gospel, or I might listen to some opera. So music is what helps me.
yeah,
I love to craft and make things. So I just sit there and paint, make stuff out of other people's junk, what they throw away, old jars. I get excited. I'm the one that looks at the jar and I say, "Oh, I can make something out of that," as opposed to throw it in the trash. And so that makes me happy. But what is it that makes you happy? And it could be reading a good book, taking
yeah,
a bubble bath. Self care is so important, and you need to put yourself on your schedule.
yeah.
And I routinely do that. My massage therapist, I found my massage therapist again. I'm so happy I got her regularly booked because I know that I need that to get all those, that my lymphatic system working well and all that. I go and I take care of myself, and I actually walk what I talk. I make sure I put me on the schedule, and I didn't always do that.
Yes, and I can't preach that enough, the importance of putting yourself on your schedule. I mean, if you're looking at your schedule right now, if you pulled out your calendar right now and you look at the next week, 2 weeks, 2 months, and there's nothing on there that reflects any form of self-care. No sort of planned breaks or mini vacation or staycations. Like
Yes.
just anything, something that says, you know what, in this block of time, I am prioritizing my care, my self care. There's something not okay with that if you're looking at your calendar and nothing is there. It just you have to fix that. And clearly, that's a bit of a soapbox
Mhm.
topic for me. Yeah, I'm getting a little bit riled up because it's so very important, and I think a lot of people feel guilty doing it. They feel like it's somehow selfish or self-centered, or like, or they just are overwhelmed by work and they plan their career tasks first, and then by the end of their planning, there's no room for their self-care. Either way, it's something that has to be addressed. It has to be
It
addressed.
has to be. One of the best things that worked for me was learning the art of time blocking.
Yeah.
So if you were to look at my calendar, you will see where it says block. What does that block mean? That block could mean anything. That's the time that I set aside that I don't want anybody to schedule an appointment. So that if I decide to put an appointment there, I can. Or
Yeah.
maybe I'm blocking that time because I'm getting ready to go to another appointment and I want to have travel time. Or maybe I just want that time to sit down and think or do one of my favorite activities and watch Netflix and chill. But I have my time on there for me. And with everything that happens in my life, if I wouldn't put myself and my family on the calendar, my life would be so out of whack. I like to have it. I like to color code it. I'm that type of person. I like an itinerary, but I know that when I'm doing this task at this time, that's what I'm focused on. And then when the time's up, time's up. I got to move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And so that really works very well for me. Um, how it works well for you. There are some people that like paper calendars and some are like electronic. I do both because some I like to plan on paper and put it all in electronic. And
Same
that way
here.
I can see it. I'm a visual person. So
Yeah, there
yeah.
for me there's something about the tactile feel of writing with a pen. For me it's therapeutic. It really is.
Hmm.
And I work with my planner and plan out everything in there. There's actually a self-care plan section in my daily planning, and then I'll take that information and sit with my digital calendar and transfer it. And I know for some folks listening it's like that sounds redundant. What are you doing? It works for me. It works for me.
It works for me too. Like I plan out a couple of months in advance. So I kind of know when I want things. And so that way I can lock in the most important things on the calendar. And then I have those block times for additional flexibility if I need
Yeah.
it. But then the other thing is going back to the whole idea of the self care. You can't pour from an empty well. You can't pull from an empty well.
Yeah.
You need to have your own self filled up in order to continue to give and to be there for others. And so I always tell my patients self care is not selfish,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's the most loving thing you can do
Yeah.
because if you don't take care of yourself, you end up angry, bitter, and resentful.
That's right.
And who wants to live like that? Right? And
Yeah.
so it's very freeing, and to hear that it's okay if you can't take mom to the grocery store right now because you have something else planned. Let mom know, hey, I can't take you at 2, but I'll be happy to take you at 4. You don't have to tell her you're going to get your nails done at 2. She doesn't need to know that. Or if you want to take her with you. Say, well, we're going to get our nails done first, and then we'll go to the store. You see, there's that art of negotiation there, but you have to keep yourself on the schedule.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so very important. And if we can jump back real quick to the
Mhm,
stress management piece, do you have any advice? Maybe if someone's listening and they're this season they feel fairly stressed out, especially as schools are getting ready to kick
mhm.
back in. There's some colleges that are already back. Do you have any, like, maybe one or two or the top three advice that you'd give to someone as far as managing stress well, just things that they can do?
First thing I always say, don't forget to breathe. I think
Mm,
we take that for granted. I
yeah.
really do. We forget to pay attention to how we're breathing and just taking a minute or two to take a deep breath in and let it out. You would be surprised at how much better you feel. I have it programmed on my watch have a smartwatch that's programmed so I can just hit the button and I can do a breathing exercise for a minute. Sometimes I need that between clients because I've had a very challenging session. I'm
Yeah.
going to need that time to recalibrate, right? And so I would say first practice that art of breathing because it keeps you in the moment. It helps to center yourself and then you're ready to tackle the stressful thing that's in front of you. Second thing is get plenty of sleep.
Yeah.
We
So
don't get
important.
enough sleep.
So important.
We need to get some sleep. And so that's one of the biggest things, biggest changes I made in my life. And people always ask me, "Do you ever sleep? I see what all you do. Do you ever sleep?" Yes. I'm like the 8 or 9, 10 if I could have it girl sleep. I love my sleep.
Amen.
My body needs that. I know what I need because if I don't, then I'm going to be achy and having pain all day and headaches and all this stuff. I need to get my sleep. And when my body starts telling me that you're doing too much and you need to rest, I listen. I
Yeah.
learned the hard way. Listen to what your body tells you. And so I get there before I even get to that spot. I'm like, oh, I need a day to take off. Okay, I'm going to change my schedule. Or I need some time to myself. I don't care. I'm going to take this rest this afternoon and I'm going to take it easy and work a little lighter because I need that rest time. And then my last key point is that make sure that you're eating a good diet.
Yeah.
What kind of fuel are you putting into your body? I'm not saying you can never have the snacks and the things that you want, right? Everybody deserves a treat every now and then, but are you treating yourself or are you putting too much of the wrong thing in your body? So find out what works for you. And not everybody, by the way, has the same body type. So you need to
Yeah.
talk to a good dietitian or nutritionist to find out what's good for your body type. There are some people that do a lot better with more of the vegetables and they're more vegetarian diet and they do wonders. Other people, they're carnivores and you gotta go with your body type.
Yeah.
And so one size does not fit all in this instance. And that's a beautiful thing. So don't let people guilt you that you're eating too much or that not enough or all this. Find out what works for your body. And so that's what I encourage people to do. And then, make sure you're taking care of yourself. So those are some of those things that I would do. Those top threes I have.
No, those are great. Those are great. And I mean, so foundational. So absolutely foundational. And it's interesting that now we're having to walk with people and teach people how very important these foundational things in life are, as opposed to them being taught that in school. Like
Mhm.
there's so much, and the more I have these conversations, the more I'm just reminded of the lack that exists in the school system and what's actually taught. Because there's some very helpful things you learn, but then there's so many other things that you just do not walk away with, by the time you finish the 12th grade, depending on where you go to school, I'm sure. But
Mhm.
for the majority of people, by the end of school, you don't learn about proper self-care, proper mindfulness or wellness care in caring for yourself, your mental health, your physical body, how to eat right. There's so much there that I think either needs to be overhauled or introduced completely brand new. But again, that's a whole different conversation on the school
Yes,
system, I'm sure.
I've always wanted to teach a life skills class because I work with young people,
Yeah.
and with the young people that I work with, I'm amazed at how many, and my own family included, don't know how to put together a proper budget.
Yep.
Don't know how to save money. Don't really know how finance work, and that's what's keeping us broke and disgusted, right? Because we don't know how money works.
Yeah.
And we're from the generation of the families that didn't talk about how much mom and dad made in money, so we don't know. And so it's a really a shock when kids get out of school and they find out they got to pay taxes. I remember having this conversation with my niece, and she's just out of high school and starting her first real adult job and everything, and I'm explaining to her about paying for, whatever she's going to do with her taxes and how to, get her taxes. And I'm explaining to her about her health insurance and that she will have her health insurance taken out of her paycheck. She's like, I don't want to have that taken out of my paycheck. I said, yes, you do. And you want to do this if you're in a high deductible plan. And I'm explaining to you how you pay less taxes. And it's just like, but all she knows is that she's getting less money. I said, no, in the long run, you're actually getting more money. You have to
Uh-huh.
include the benefits as part of your package, and you have to understand that the company is paying a percentage of that. And if you had to pay it out of your pocket, you would be hurting. Now, fortunately for her, she's a very healthy person, so she probably won't even use her health care benefits that much, but you don't want to be without it in case something catastrophic happens, unfortunately. You don't want to get that $100,000 bill because you had no insurance. You
Uh-huh.
know, in one car wreck, one accident, she works in construction. I'm like, one accident, it could be catastrophic. So, yeah, you need to have that. So I talked to her about that, and I talked to her about her life insurance and all these other things that she needs to have, and and explain to her the facts of life. But a lot of kids don't get that. They don't even know how to sign a check or write a check.
Yeah. Something that, for us is very simple,
Hmm.
but I mean it's almost archaic now when I think about I have a younger sister who just turned 12, and for her I don't think she's ever seen a physical check. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think for her it's always almost totally been digital her
Yep.
entire life. And so
Yep.
the idea of interacting with a physical check is so foreign to her. But
Hmm.
these, like you said, life skills. They're life skills.
I had
Um,
to laugh until she wanted to get a loan, and I said, yes, I'm telling all your business. So if she hears this, I'm telling all your business. She wanted to
well,
get a
we still
loan.
don't know who you are, what
Yeah.
your name is, so you're good. You're good.
Yeah. I told her, I said, you don't need to get a loan because she wanted like an $800 loan. I said, you don't need to get a loan for that. I said, loan it to yourself. And she said, what do you mean? I said, stop calling Uber Eats. Save your money. Make your meal at home. Stop going out and pay off this bill, and then you can have fun later. She's like, oh, yeah.
Ooh, delayed gratification.
Yes.
Uh huh.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, there's so much we can dive into on that. But I do want to keep
Mhm.
diving into your story
Sure, sure.
and all that you do, because you're also the founder of Nurse Shark Academy.
Yes.
Which, one, I love the name. I think that's amazing. Um, but you coach nurses in launching and scaling their businesses. How did that come about? When did you kind of fall into to doing that?
Well, I had been coaching people individually one on one for quite a while. I've had people that would come up to me and say, hey, how do I start this business? What I do? How do I get an LLC? And so they would start asking me these questions, and then I get on Facebook Messenger messages from people and say, hey, can you help me with this? And so last year, I decided to turn that into a formal program so
Yeah,
that you can either do the courses on kind of like a on your own type thing, or you could do it with a cohort or do it as a group, or if you really are ambitious and really want to get to it, you could do the one-on-one. But I found that a lot of business coaches are for businesses that want to grow and they're ready to take it to the next level. But I'm like, well, what about the people that just getting started?
yeah,
That's a niche that I found that really needs the most help because they don't know what they don't know. And having started two businesses myself and going through that process, I explained to them that if you can write a nursing care plan, you can write a business plan. The business plan is a plan for your business so that you know where you should be at year one, year three, year five. You know the next steps as you grow because you've already planned them out. We've already put the blueprint in place. And so I've seen where a lot of people start their businesses and we're good at doing the thing, right? If you were to
yeah.
ask me to go teach CPR, I can do that. I do that. That's what I
In
do.
your
But I
sleep.
can do it in my sleep. I'm doing it for 25 years. But let's say people were to ask, well, where are your policies and procedures and how do you get this done? Then I'd have to come up and pull up some stuff if I didn't have that in place. And so that's where a lot of businesses fail is because they haven't put the proper foundation in place.
Yeah.
And so things like I had another uh, shark, and she came into the program and she wanted me to help her open up another branch of her business in another city. And I said, "Be sure, I'd be happy to help you. Um, Give me the job description for the person." She wanted me to help her find a program manager. I said, "Okay, give me the job description." I got a list of duties. I'm like, "That's not a proper job description." I said, "Well, where's your training manual?" She didn't have one. I said, "Well, how are you going to onboard this person to do the same process that you have in your other location so all locations are operating the same?" She didn't have any of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's walking through those conversations that we start and do that up front so that when you're ready to expand, when you're ready to go to the next level, you don't have to try to reinvent the wheel or backtrack or do all those other things. You have that. And I learned doing that with our very first business. One of the biggest things we learned in that business, our very first lesson was collect your money up
Yeah.
front.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
are very altruistic. We're nurses. We're going to take you at your word. We had students. We had a CNA training school. We had students say, "Hey, we'll pay you when we get our first job." Well, they didn't. They forgot about us. And then we looked up, and we were going through the financials, and we were $10,000 in bad debt, and that's devastating to a startup.
Yes.
So we were able to send that to our attorney, and they were able to send out the collection letters for us. We were able to recoup 50% of that back. What's great about this is that one of our former students, his father was so grateful that we took care of him that the father paid the bill because the son wasn't able to. The
Ah,
father paid
okay.
his bill. Out of that program, we had our very first nursing assistant program. Out of that, we had students go on to become nurses. We had one student become an administrator of a nursing home, very successful, who, by the way, kept his CNA license so that anytime he's on the floor, he could actually work the floor.
Oh,
How
wow.
cool is that? We've had physician assistants come through, to become a physician assistant. One's in medical school now. And so these are the kind of things that we fostered for the students that we had. Some of them came back and became QMAs with us. So we're really fortunate that we had that legacy. We closed that business in 2020, um, my partners decided one wanted to retire, one decided that she wanted to do something else. And so, mutual decision, it was right before the pandemic hit. I'm telling you, that was a God thing. We ended up closing this. And then I expanded the Baxter Professional Services and then added on the Nurse Shark Academy. So I know that there are reasons for how things happen when they happen.
Yeah.
When I started BPS, I I studied. I wanted to know what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. I went and learned about consulting and learned about um, the role of a legal nurse consultant, and I learned about business coaching. And I went and studied these things and read dozens upon books and marketing. I looked at all those things so that when I was ready to get started, I said I started accidentally on purpose. This is the on purpose part, is
Yeah.
that I got prepared for this. I saw it was coming and I got prepared for it so that when I was ready to launch, I had everything ready to go because I learned from that first business.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is that out of that, we got featured in our local newspaper a couple of times. We've been able to help other people climb up. I've got one shark now. She's going to start her CNA training school. She already has her CPR training school together, and she's got contracts with other school systems, and she's just doing it. She's killing it. And I'm so
Nice.
proud of her. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's such a rich legacy, and you have so much more life ahead of you. And so I'm like, you're already doing so much, and then you have all of that already there. Now, at
Mhm.
what point did you realize, because as you're talking and sharing your story, multiple businesses and coaching entrepreneurs, startups, and all of this is happening, at what point did you realize, man, I think I kind of have a knack for business? Like, I love nursing. Clearly, that's a big part of my heart, my life. Um, but I think this business thing kind of comes naturally to me as well.
Well, I tell you, I didn't realize it. So I told you I taught CPR for 25 years. I did that as a nursing student just to make extra money and had a
Yeah.
business and didn't know it. So people would contact me as a CPR instructor and say, "Hey, I know you teach classes. Can you come to my business and teach this class?" And so I just did it to make extra cash. Never thought about including that into a business model till years later and
Wow.
realized I liked it. So when we started our first business, I never started out to be an entrepreneur, by the way.
If you struggle to reach the goals you set for yourself, the good news is it's most likely not because you're lazy or that you lack discipline. Statistically speaking, you're most likely struggling to reach your goals because your life is out of balance. In 2017, the Harvard Business Review reported that the United States spends more than $190 billion with a B billion dollars to address the physical and psychological effects of burnout in the average working professional. And these numbers are from before the pandemic, so who knows what it is now. The point is, anyone trying to reach a goal while navigating burnout, whether consciously or subconsciously, is not set up to succeed. This was my experience until I discovered the life balance approach to reaching your goals and changing your life. This approach to reaching your goals takes into account your life balance as you work towards your goals. Subsequently, it basically guarantees success for almost any goal you're trying to reach. And I know that is a big promise, but it is very much realistic and very much possible. In my best selling book, Life Balance, I outlined the principles of this formula. And due to popular demand, the online course for the book is now available. In this course, I walk you through each and every principle individually and how to apply it to your life. It's a self paced course, so you can take it on your own time and go through it as quickly or as slowly as you would like. Every purchase includes a digital copy of my book, Life Balance, the Life Balance workbook in PDF format, and the Life Balance planner, also in PDF format. For a limited time, you can purchase this course at 50% off when you use promo code PODCAST. To purchase this course today, visit paulwcroswell.com. Now let's get back to the episode.
When I started the business with His Solutions Healthcare with my partners, I simply just wanted a quiet place to lease because she was starting this business. So I can write a book. I was working on a fiction novel at the time.
Yeah,
And so I was in between jobs and I wanted just a quiet place to go so I can focus and write. And she goes, "Well, that's great. That's wonderful. You can do that. But can you help us with this business? We're going to be teaching people, to be CNAs because this is in 2008, we were starting. And this is right in the middle of the recession. So people needed jobs
yeah,
right away. And so we wanted to do something to help the community. We wanted to help people get jobs. And so that's how we got started. And then once I got started doing, because I'd been in management before, I knew about budgets, I knew about finance, I knew about all that stuff.
yeah,
So when we started this business, I realized, hey, I kind of dig this. I like being able to make the decisions to make the impact that we need in the community. Because a lot of times when you're working for someone else, you have to live their vision, right?
yep,
You're feeding into their vision. And when I saw that what I was doing and when I was working, that everything I was doing was feeding into someone else's vision and not into mine. And I had an epiphany one day that the physician that I was working for, I love him dearly, still great friends. But I realized every time he picked up a new building, I got more work, but not necessarily more money. And I thought, this is a crazy system here. I'm not, and I'm like, I'm not doing this the right way. And it was that epiphany that made me think, all right, it's time for me to really get serious about building my own legacy and my own business. And
yeah.
so, yes, I still work full time as a nurse practitioner, but I'm also building my own legacy. What I
That's
do
right.
there is awesome, and I love my patients. And, even though some days can be trying, I truly enjoy working with my patients. But I
Yeah.
also know that there's other things that I can be doing, and retirement is getting closer and closer so that I can do other things. Retirement to me doesn't mean I stop working. Retirement means I maybe stop doing this activity full time so that I can shift my focus and do something else. And COVID is something that taught me that. It's like you don't have to live and do things the same way. Things can change and it could be okay.
Yeah.
COVID happened for me, not to me. And that's a quote that I have from a friend of mine.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
that is really, really good. I love that. COVID happened, you said for me, not to me. And I don't know if anyone listening feels the same way as I do as you hear that. I think that is a very powerful mindset shift,
Yes.
as you're navigating life and making decisions and, just reviewing your life and the decisions you've made and the things you've gone through, that is a very empowering perspective to have. I love that so much. You should put that on a shirt. Maybe work with your friend who you got it from, put that on a shirt.
Yes, I can put
Um
that on there by Pedro.
so um so you business, nursing, coaching. I mean, just all of that's happening. But then on the other side, you serve as director of outreach at your church.
Yes.
What what does what does that look like, director of outreach? What does that mean?
A lot of my ministry is with people outside of the church. So one of the things pre-COVID, we're still fighting our way to get back, but we worked with the youth detention center. We had a active jail ministry, and so I typically work with the youth. The pastor, I said, "You guys can work with the adults. I want the young people."
Yeah.
Not that I don't love the adults, but I'm really drawn to the young people because I see so much potential for them. And so I will go out and meet people, and somehow people find me. If it's out in the park or wherever, people are drawn. And so I just talk to anyone. And my whole ministry is, I kind of like my mom, is she's an evangelist as well. Uh,
Okay.
and we're out in the streets, and it's talking to people and getting to know them and finding out where they are. And then of course I'm sort of I am the church nurse at the church. So
Oh,
anything
interesting.
that happens, the pastor calls me and said, "You need to go see Sister So and So because she's not doing well. Her diabetes is out of whack. You need to go help her fix it."
That is so
So
interesting.
that's
I
my
don't think I've
job.
heard that title before. Church nurse.
Yes, I am a commissioned parish nurse. And I actually, that's how I got into graduate school, was taking that course, but that's a whole long story. But I go and I help people in the community and the congregation manage their health. And that's one of the things that I do. So I make home visits, hospital visits,
Yeah.
um, other things like that. Yeah. And if there's an issue or a problem, usually a medical question, they come to me. And I typically give them, okay, well, these are the questions you need to ask your primary care provider because I am not treating you, right?
That's
So I'm
right.
not giving you medical advice, but I'm telling you these are the questions you need to ask. And then now it's kind of funny. I'm getting questions for people like, "Do you think I need to sue? Do I have a legal case?" And I said, "Well, you need to talk to an attorney. I can recommend some. However, these are some of the things I would ask of your surgeon first. Talk to your doctor, get a second opinion. These are all things that we as patients should know that we can do, but we
Yeah.
don't advocate for ourselves very well. So that's kind of part of my role too.
Yeah,
They
I
know
think
what I
it's
do, so they come find me.
well, I mean, that's the I don't want to call it a curse, but it's
Mhm.
the good and the bad of being well known, right? You put yourself out
Yes.
there, and as you do, if people who are in need, who know that you offer something that can help them in that area, they're gonna come find you.
In the grocery store, at a restaurant. I've often had a mini therapy session right there at a restaurant. I mean, I just met this person, and they happened to have gone to school with my husband, and he goes, "Oh yeah, my wife's a nurse." And the next thing I know, they're telling me all their baby mama drama with their exes, ex-wives. It's just
Oh man.
like, I'm like, I just came to hear some music and eat a good dinner.
Well, you
You know?
you know the beautiful thing about that though is it says a lot about your personality, about the warmth and the welcomingness of who you are in your presence. And because you can tell when you're talking to someone and it's like, oh man, I don't feel very welcome. That I think this conversation needs to be short. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna wrap up. And it's very different when you feel safe.
Yes.
And and someone feels safe around you. I mean, that's such a gift that you give to them, uh, but you give it to them because of who you are and how you are. It's something that comes natural. I'm sure there's some people who might be able to learn it as a skill of sorts, I guess, how to
Hmm.
be more welcoming. But there are some people where it's just natural. It's just a part of how you function, who you are, how you interact with people, and you invite vulnerability. You invite that transparency.
It's interesting. I one day right before I accepted my call to the ministry, I said, I was having this conversation with the Lord. And I said, why do you keep sending these people to me? Because I had a gentleman, an older gentleman, in the grocery store, and I'm picking up salsa. I'm
Yeah.
planning on making this taco salad. I want salsa. Right after church, I'm in my heels, my dress. And he goes, "Oh, that's good salsa." I said, "Oh, yes, I had it before. I love it." And he says, "Let me tell me what happened to me." I'm like, "Okay." He started from the day I was born.
Oh
You have to
wow.
realize this man has to be in his 70s. Okay. So
Wow.
for
Okay.
45 minutes, he took me through his entire life story and I couldn't get away from him. I felt really bad for him. I'm like, standing here in my heels, my feet are killing me. And I'm like, I'm listening to this man tell me the story about how his family was dysfunctional growing up. His first wife ran off, took his kids. He had to get the sheriff to go get his kids and get them back, and blah blah blah. To his second wife, his kids didn't like her because she's fat. And I'm like, he's telling me this whole thing. And every time he took a breath, I thought he was in it. He said, "And do you know what I did about that?" And I'm just like, holy cow. And I said, well, at the end, I just said, well, thank you for sharing. And this other lady came up to buy salsa. And he goes, that's some good salsa. I said, well, thanks, but I gotta go. And I'm like, I know this man needed to talk to someone.
Uh-huh.
I didn't do anything to help him other than to listen.
Yeah. And
And
sometimes
so
that's all that's necessary.
that's all that's necessary. If you're just be there to listen, you don't have to solve the world's problems.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just being there to listen. Now you have to have healthy boundaries now. You have to have healthy boundaries. That's
Oh,
another important thing.
absolutely.
You can't let people just dump on you all the time.
Yeah. So let's actually dive into that, right? Because
Mhm.
you gotta be present. Sometimes that's all they need, and
Mhm.
maybe really good salsa. I mean, who knows? It could
Yes.
could have been either, right? But let's talk about boundaries when you have that personality that just invites conversation and invites vulnerability. How do you mitigate that? How do you know? Okay, you know what? Now is not the time for me to be present and stay and listen. I need to cut this short. As difficult as or uncomfortable as that may
Mhm.
be, compared to no, I think this is someone I need to make a sacrifice for and just be present and listen.
It really depends on the nature of the relationship. So if it's somebody that I'm just meeting and they're angry and unloading a lot of garbage on me, right? Then I'm going to be like, hey, I understand this is how you feel. Get it. We're not going to get anywhere today. We're not going to get anywhere today.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're very upset. We can't have a conversation. Come at me when you're ready to talk, and we can talk this through, and then I'll walk away.
Yeah.
But then there's times where realize that in that moment, this person is hurting, and you need to stay there and be
Yeah.
in tune with them. And so, oftentimes, I will talk softer. I
Yeah.
will listen to what they say, lean into it, and say, "Well, I'm hearing you say you're upset because the cat threw up on the carpet again. but you keep going back to this incident you had at work. So it
Mm,
sounds like you're more upset about the thing at work than not necessarily at your cat, right? And so
yeah.
we'll listen for those cues and what's going on. And then sometimes people are just emotional vampires.
Yeah.
And those
Yeah.
are the ones that you're going to have good boundaries with. And so, you may have to set a firm, hey, you know what? I want to hear you out. I've only got about 10 minutes here. Can we cut to the chase of what's really happening, what's going on? Because if not, they're going to suck you into this long, drawn out story. They're going to keep you for 2 or 3 hours. They're going to go around in circles and they're going to become angry at you because you're not giving them what they need, as opposed to someone who just wants you to hear them out. And so it takes an art to recognize some of those people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I'm sorry, go ahead. Were you
No, I was going to
finished?
say some of them are they're just garbage trucks. They're just going to dump all their garbage on you. And I've learned to say, I appreciate that's how you feel. That's not how I intended things to go. Let's recircle. Let's come back to this at a different time. Let me reflect. Let me think about it. But I will exit, and I will stop a session that way too. I'm like, obviously, you're very upset today. We're not going to get anywhere. Um, why don't we reschedule this session? Why
Yeah.
don't we reschedule this conversation? And having that's going to be important. You're going to have those people that are drawn to you, especially if you're so open and giving, right? That are going
Yeah.
to want to put everything on you, but you need to reflect back and say, well, no, I'm hearing you say this. Am I understanding you to mean that? And put it back
Exactly.
on, what could you have done differently? What do you think you could have done differently? And put it right back on them, because they're going to put it on you. Of course, and there'll be some that just get mad and they'll go off and they'll take themselves out of your life, and then you're like, yay, happy, right? I have a few of those too. I'm like, move it along, no problem. uh, but I
Yeah.
shut it down. I'm like, if we're just going to go over the same litany of woe is me, and you're not really ready to move on, I'm like, hey, you know what? It sounds like you're not really ready to address this. We're going over the same thing every time. You're telling me the
Mhm.
same thing. You keep going back to that crazy boyfriend of yours. Sorry, girlfriend. I'm not wanting to talk about that today. You know?
Yeah, and I appreciate the advice. It's so important. So I'm an empath, right?
Hmm.
Deeply introverted, and one of my strengths, according to the Clifton Strengths Assessment, if you're familiar with that,
Hmm.
is individualization,
Hmm.
right? I deeply value the individual. I can be in a crowd of people and lock if I'm in conversation with someone, I can lock in on that person and everyone else basically disappears. And I only care about what your story is, what's going on in your life, your heart. And as an empath, I coach now, and for a few years, I was a student ministry pastor at a fairly large church, and
Hmm.
I had to learn. It took a while, but I had to learn how to navigate those boundaries, because I would, my natural instinct is to want to be present. It's to want to help. It's to want to hear you out because I'm interested. I'm
Hmm.
here. I'm like
Hmm.
I'm trying to figure out your story and the pieces and everything, that even if it's kind of scrambled, I'm putting it together as you're talking and trying to reflect it back to you, like you were saying, like this is what I'm hearing. And it took me a while to realize that there are some conversations where there is nothing to piece back together and offer. They genuinely just want to dump whatever is going
Hmm.
on. And there's some spaces where, you know what, I'm gonna allow you to dump because this is heavy on you.
Hmm.
But then there were plenty of others where it's like I've learned my lesson, and I can't be the receptor of this right now. I'm not in a place to carry that for you. I can offer you advice on some of the things, but other than that, this, we're
Yes.
closing there, you know?
Empaths can oftentimes lead to, if you're not careful, codependency,
Yeah.
where you get your value from what the ability to help others, and it's all about the other, and you neglect self.
Yep.
And I see that so much with a lot of our empathic people. It's always about well, I want to help fix them and make what they're doing, make their lives better. I said, well, what about your life? You're the one who's really messed up over here, right? You haven't fixed
Uh-huh.
this on your life. I said, so let's talk about you. And then they invariably want to talk about other people. I say, I understand you're feeling what everybody else is feeling, but what are you feeling?
Yeah.
And so, they have to be very careful with that of going too far. And that's what I learned with some of my students. I learned very quickly with my students not to work harder than they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're not willing to put
That's
in the
such a
effort,
good
I do
lesson.
that with my coaching clients. If you're not willing to put in the effort, I'm not going to put in all this massive effort if you're not going to meet me,
Yeah.
I will go the distance with you, okay? If you're willing to do the work. But if you're going to be, turning in half done assignments and not doing your homework and, you know, blowing off your tests or whatever I have you to do, your deadlines, I'm not going to work harder than you are. Why? Because I want to spend the time with the ones that are really wanted. And maybe later on you'll get to that place where you're available and able to do that. And I have had that hard conversation with people to say, maybe now is not a good time for you
Yeah.
because you're focused on XYZ in your life and things are going on and you can't focus on what your goals are and you're letting all this other stuff interfere with what you say are your goals. I'm not seeing it here. And so maybe you need to take a step back, reevaluate, let me know, and I'll be happy to work with you later on. And we kind of worked through some of that in session one. That's first session. We talk about that kind of stuff. Session one, we talk about that kind of stuff with the coaching program. What is your commitment going to be? Because I'm committed to getting you to the finish line if you want to get there. But there's so many people that um, jump in and really aren't sure of what they're committing to. And I want you to know up front. I don't want any
Yeah.
surprises. I don't want people saying this isn't what I thought it was going to be. No, it's going to be hard work. I mean, I had one of the young lady was talking about that is starting her CNA school. She got her business plan done. She was like, man, that was a lot of work. And, oh, that was awful. And I said, yeah, wasn't it hard? Yet, because I made her do the work. I made her do the work. She goes to the bank to open up her business account because now she's starting to get all this business. She needs a separate business account. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
They asked her for her financials and her projections. And she goes, Miss Tina, I had it right there in my plate. I could just turn it in and it just went so smooth. I said, we did the work. We put the foundation in. So when you walk into the bank, you walk in with authority.
Exactly.
You don't have your hat in your hand. You know why you're there. And so we talk about those things. And so a lot of it is mindset work, a
Yeah.
mindset work.
Yeah. And like you said, it's setting the expectation. Like, hey,
Hmm.
this is what this takes. This is what it's gonna ask of you, and you're either gonna show up or you're not. But I'm not gonna show up for you. You gotta commit to showing up for yourself. Because at
Hmm.
some point I'm not gonna be there.
Exactly. And you know what? I have my own coaches, right? If you have a
Yeah.
coach that refuses to be coached, you have the wrong coach.
Oh yeah. Big time.
And I have a business coach for my LNC business, and I have another business coach that's for my overall business and all the things that we're doing. And they're constantly challenging me. They're
Yeah.
constantly challenging me and making sure I do the things that I say I'm going to do. And that's important. If you don't have someone in there challenging you, how are you going to get the things done? Because it's so easy to fall back into that comfortable space. And
Yeah.
then it becomes, well, I'm blaming this person or that person because I'm not where I want to be.
Yeah. Now, I'm gonna switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
Um, if you're comfortable with this, because you
Hmm.
briefly mentioned this
Hmm.
and kind of glossed over, and I was like, I think she thinks I missed that, but I'm gonna come back to it.
Okay.
Um, you said you were working on a novel at some point,
Yes.
and just kind of left it there and moved on. So I'm jumping back to it now. Did you finish that novel? Is that
I never went
out
back to
or
finish the fiction novel. However, I am in the process of writing a couple of business books. I
love it?
have I am a public speaker. I have a signature talk that I give, and what I did is During the pandemic, we've had all these wonderful Zoom coaching meeting seminars, whatever. And what I found is that everyone pretty much had the same PowerPoint slide. It just got repetitive. And so I was tasked to speak to a group of women business leaders. And I didn't want to be the same typical business coach giving you the principles from this or that author. So what I did is I wrote a short story
Oh, nice.
and I used that as my signature talk. And the audience loved it so much. They said, "We want you to write a book because I want to give it to my daughter. And when you launch your book, we want to be the first place that you bring it to the launch."
I'd say
And
that's a pretty good sign.
yes. And so I've given this signature talk a couple of other places and gotten such a great response. And I'm in the process of working on that book. And then I thought, and I've given myself a challenge to write a book in 30 days. And this is to pretty much kind of tell my story. And it's a book about being an entrepreneur and not really knowing that you wanted to be one. Because that's
Yeah.
exactly what my story is. And I
Yeah.
think that's what a lot of nurses and other people that are starting and launching a business, do you really want to be an entrepreneur? And so I thought, maybe that might be a good primer for people just to kind of get thinking about maybe this is for me or maybe it's not for me, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Not everybody's meant to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You know,
100% true.
I mean,
And
staying up and worrying over the financials
because
because you're the person making the money.
it's something that I hope gets talked about more because from the outside it looks so glamorous. Oh, you're an entrepreneur, you work for
Mhm,
yourself, you make your own money. Um yeah, I also work longer hours. I also stress a little bit more about the details and the back end of the business because I am the details in the back end of the business, and so all of those things are on my mind as opposed to if you're an employee somewhere, you go in, you do your work, you leave for most
mhm,
jobs, and you don't worry about the back end. You don't worry about the bottom line, and none of that is generally your concern in most positions. And so that stuff doesn't sit with you. You don't take it throughout your day. And it's a skill, a mindset and a perspective you have to develop and cultivate as an entrepreneur, almost a callousness
mhm.
to be willing to deal with it and take the blows in stride and keep going, right? And there's a resilience
Yes.
necessary.
Yes. Yes. I would joke to some of my friends and they'd be like, "Well, can you do such such or whatever?" And I'm like, "No, my boss is making me work and I can't stand that heifer. She's horrible." And they would look at me like, "Wait, don't you work for yourself?" I said, "Yes." And that cow makes me go into work when I don't want to. She wakes me up in the middle of the night talking about she got ideas. I'm so sick of her sometimes. And they just get to laughing. But that's kind of way I compartmentalize things. But I enjoy what I do. So people
Exactly.
ask me, "Well, why do you do all this?" Because I like it. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't do it. I decided that when I was a young kid. I decided if I didn't like something, I wasn't going to do it. That
Exactly.
was it. My mom told me that, something about growing up and you have to do things when you're an adult. And I'm like, no, when I'm an adult, if I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it. I have to do it because I'm a kid because you make me. When I'm an adult, if I don't want to, I ain't gonna. And so I really enjoy what I do. And yeah, sometimes I get tired and um, sometimes it seems overwhelming. But then I think about the new challenge or something will come up like I just decided on this 3 days ago. I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write this book in 30 days. I made a firm commitment to do this. It's not gonna be a long book. It's gonna be a shorter book, but I'm gonna do
Yeah.
this in 30 days. On the drive home from the office, um, I made this decision. I was watching a replay of a podcast, and I stopped the podcast, and I said, "I need to dictate in my phone. I have a new phone." I said, "I don't know how to dictate into this phone." I said, "What can I do?" I said, "I know." I started a Zoom meeting with myself and just dictated the first chapter on the drive home. because I'm like, I'm getting this book done. So I'm a couple days behind because of all this stuff with the colonoscopy and everything. But I plan to get back on it, and I'm like, yes, I want to get this book done. I think we can knock this out. I already have a an editor and a proofreader
Yeah.
locked in. She's waiting for me to give her the book anyway, because I've told her about this about a year ago, that I was going to write a book, and so I already have people in line. I just need to get myself into gear and not get focused on something else. So I was like, if I give myself a firm deadline, I'm typically going to meet
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so awesome, and I do hope and wish you well on that. I hope that that works out well for you because I think you have a great story to tell. So I'm looking forward to that book at some point. If when that
Hmm.
book comes out, I'd love to have you back on and talk about the story and that process. Book in 30 days and so on. When I wrote my book, it was accidental. I didn't start out with the goal of writing a book. It just kind of developed into that. So I love to hear the journeys of other people. And I love what you said about, when you become an adult, choosing to do the things that bring you joy,
Hmm.
the things that you want to do. And initially, and I think to a lot of people, when it first hits your ears in our society and our mindsets or the popular mindsets, it sounds irresponsible, but what it really is honest.
Yes.
It's being honest with yourself, and there is a way to be honest with yourself and be responsible. And I
Hmm.
think we don't teach that enough to people, and so they get to the point where it's like, no, no, no. I believe if I'm gonna be if I'm gonna be responsible, it's gonna be boring, it's gonna be stressful, I'm gonna dislike it, or I'm going to be irresponsible and love it. Like it's just going to be the best time ever of my life because, that's what irresponsibility looks like.
The most irresponsible thing that you can do is to live an inauthentic life.
See, you just another t-shirt, just another quote for a t-shirt. Put that on a shirt too.
Yep. Yeah. I when I turned 35, I said to myself, okay, so the Bible says that you live to be about 70, right?
Yeah.
And I had my midlife crisis early. And I thought, if I only have 35 years left, do I still want to be working here and doing this? And I said, no. And I made a plan to get out. You don't have to quit that day, but make an exit plan. And I made an exit plan to get out. And because of that, look at where I've been able to go because I wasn't afraid
Be
to try
honest.
something new. Um, do I plan to live to be just 70? No. I got a lot more living to do. But I thought, I'm responsible for this life. If I've only got one life to live, I better make it the best life that I can.
Yeah.
And if that means I have to make sacrifices here to gain this later, then let's do that. If I have to, you know, not take the vacation today in order for me to get this project done, but I've got a longer vacation coming up tomorrow, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's a trade off.
It really
But
is.
ultimately, it's to the goal. And so if you don't have a goal to get to, you're just going to be wandering around, right?
Yeah.
And things
Yeah.
are going to, seem good. You're going to run to this thing and run to that thing because you don't have a path. And so I've become more cognizant of what I allow into my life. You know, all business isn't good business.
Amen.
And an opportunity looks really good. But as one of my coaches said, don't look at the deal, look at the people.
Yeah. That's
And if
good.
the people that you're working with, your energy doesn't flow and it's just something off, it's not the right deal for you. It's
Yeah.
not that maybe they're good people, maybe they're great people, but it might not be the right deal for you. And I figured that out. I had an opportunity to start a lice removal business. Lice removal business makes a lot of money, does very
Yeah.
well. I researched it. There's only two in our state. I would be the third one in the state. Good niche to get into. Thought, oh, this
Yeah.
will be great. And then I had to take a step back. I don't like head lice. I don't want to be removing head lice. I can make a lot of money removing head lice. It gives me the heebie jeebies just thinking about that. I said, this would not be the business for me. I would be
Yeah,
miserable if I had to do this every day.
yeah,
But for somebody else who's an LPN and she's a school nurse, and this is how I learned of it from her being on a podcast. Um, she saw this in the school system. She did this every day. So she turned it into a lucrative business and it's doing very well and was happy doing it because this is something she did. Now,
yeah.
me, that's not me. However, if that's it speaks to you and you want to start a headlights business as a nurse, come see me. I'll help you get the background. I can tell you about the franchise. We can go through the stuff. I'll help you launch your business removing lice. I don't want to remove the lice. And
Yeah,
that was the epiphany for me
yeah,
is realizing these are great businesses, but I don't want to do those businesses. What I want to do is help someone else succeed in their business.
yeah,
And that's what makes me happy is
yeah.
seeing someone else climb that ladder and succeed and do well.
And that's you being honest with yourself, and that's so
Yes.
important, so important.
Hmm.
Man, I this has been such a great conversation. um yeah, I looked forward to it and did not disappoint at all. I think we can go for probably another hour if we're not careful, but I think this is a great stopping point. So one last question before we wrap up:
Hmm.
where can people find you if they want to get in contact with you, if they want to, look into any of your services? Where should they look?
Well, you can always start at our website, baxterprofessionalservices.com. You can follow us on Facebook. We have a Baxter Professional Services page. We have a Nurse Shark Academy by Professional Services page. We're also on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Alignable. You can find us on social media. And then you can always just give us a call. Our number is 765-387-8046. And you can also email me at bps@baxterprofessionalservices.com.
Love it. Love it. And I'll be sure to include all of those links and information, as well as a number and email if you'd like, in the
Hmm.
description of
Yes.
this episode. So if you're listening and you're like, man, I want to get in touch with Mrs. Baxter, and I just need to connect with her. I have questions. I just need answers. And it sounds like she has the
Mhm.
the answers. Pause this episode. You can pause here. We're just about at the end. So I mean, go ahead, pause, click that link, go find out more, go get in contact. I encourage it. Man, I have really enjoyed this conversation, and I do hope I get to have you on again. I'm looking forward to hearing about your books as they come out and reading up on them. I'm sure that there's a lot I can learn from them. So please keep me posted on that.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure. Well, guys, that's it for today. Man, I really hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Until next time, take care. That's it for today's episode. I truly hope you enjoyed the show. To learn more about today's guests, including the links and resources related to everything we discussed, visit the podcast page at paulwcroswell.com, where you can find the entire podcast archive, as well as information about my book titled Life Balance, as well as the Life Balance Planner, and much more. If you'd like to support the podcast, the easiest and most impactful thing that you can do is subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on YouTube. Also, leaving a positive review or comment is also important and greatly appreciated. Sharing the show or your favorite episode with friends or on social media is, of course, awesome and very helpful. Finally, for podcast updates, special offers on the Life Balance Planner, online courses, and more, please subscribe to our newsletter. You can find a link to do so in the show notes.